Welcome to the American Small Business League podcast. I am Bruce Tatarus, and with me is founder and president Lloyd Chapman. How are you today?
Fantastic. I'm talking today from Victoria, British Columbia,
Nice.
and it's quite lovely.
Well, nice. A
If
very
you haven't been to
inspiring.
Victoria, you should come.
Say that again.
If you haven't been to Victoria, British Columbia, you should come and visit. It's absolutely beautiful.
Well, nice. Well, we want to talk about our Don't Cheat Women project, and we want to talk about why it is the election winning issue that all candidates for the midterms, House and Senate next year should embrace. Am I right?
Absolutely. It'd be crazy not to. It'd be
Well,
crazy not to.
Well, what's the nuts and bolts of our ask? What do we want Congress to do and candidates to run on vis-a-vis related to the federal contracts that are or should be going to women-owned small businesses?
All right. Well, let's start off with some basic statistics. In America, according to the Census Bureau, 99.9% of all U.S. firms are small businesses. 99.9. That means only 0.1% are not small businesses, right? Small businesses create about 98% of all net new jobs. Most Americans work for a small business, and I think America is a small business economy. So when you watch the television, they're always talking about the Fortune 500 and big companies. Our economy is based on small businesses. Small businesses create, like I said, most of the jobs, and so America is a small business economy. And right now, under federal law, it says a minimum of 23% of all federal contracts go to small businesses. Within that 23, 5% for women. So let's think about this. Women are half the population. They own 43% of the businesses. And never in your lifetime have they ever got more than 5%. That means men get 95. So every year you've been alive, if you're watching our show right now, the federal government has given 95% of all federal spending, 95% of the American people's tax dollars to companies owned by men, while companies owned by women have gotten 5%. I think that needs to change. I actually think it's illegal. I think I could probably win a lawsuit and say that's discrimination. So let's talk about why politicians should support that. In America, elections are won and lost by 1 or 2%. I think Trump beat Harris last time by 2 percentage points in the popular vote. So, and my recollection of the last 20 years is most elections were won and lost by, 1 or 2%. I remember the term hanging Chad. Remember that hanging Chad? They're,
Mm-hmm.
looking at a little piece of paper, it's tenths of a percent.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to be elected to Congress or you will stay in Congress, I would support an issue that's going to appeal to half the population, which is women. And I think if I were running for Congress, what my first speech would be, women are half the population. They own 43% of the businesses. And for the last 50 years, companies owned by men have gotten over 95% of all federal contracts. And I think that needs to change. That's what I would run on.
Right. And I would add to that, the federal government spends it's projected to spend $800 billion this year. That's the official figure for goods and services. You and I know there's a lot that could be added up that really
It's
makes that
twice that. It's
okay.
twice that.
Fair enough, fair enough. But the average person searching is going to see
Yeah.
more or less 800 billion, and they are the largest good purchaser of goods and services on the planet. And that's an important context. Also, that the 14 million women-owned businesses that are out there generate almost 3 trillion in revenue. They employ over 12 million people, and most importantly, they sell what the government buys. So there's no reason for squashing them down to this 5% goal, which you've taught me in the world that women-owned businesses really only get maybe 1 or 2%.
Yeah. To tell you the truth, my recollection, you probably know more about this than I do, but my recollection is they only claim to hit that goal, I think, twice in the last 30 years.
Exactly.
That was it
Yep.
2015 and 2020, they claimed to hit it.
2015, 2019,
Yeah.
that's it.
So the experts that I've talked to, and all logic shows the government spends about at least 1.5 trillion, right? And they're giving I would say 97% to companies owned by men. But let's just go ahead and go with the 5%. Okay. Um, they've only claimed to hit that twice in the last 30 years. That's crazy. That's insane. So half the taxpayers, half of them are getting 5% or less. The other half are getting 95% or more. That's insane. I actually think it's illegal.
Hmm.
I think I could win a lawsuit on the Civil Rights Act that's discrimination, right? Quite
Hmm.
frankly, I call it discrimination against women. My goal is to end the discrimination against women in government contracting. That's the way I explain it, right?
Yep.
But yeah, if you want to be elected to Congress, by the way, why would you not support that?
Hmm.
So if you don't support that, then you're supporting giving over 95% of all federal spending to companies owned by men, right? If you
Right.
don't support increasing the goal for women-owned
Right.
small businesses, that means you're sticking with giving uh, over 95% of all federal spending to half the country and give the other half 5% or less. That's stupid. Let's talk about the economic benefits of it. Uh, Gosh, it was probably 10 or 15 years ago. The Senate Small Business Committee released a report. Says for every 1% in contracts of small business go up, it creates 100,000 net new jobs a year. So America's only claiming to be creating, I think, around 2 million jobs a year. And I would imagine that's completely fabricated, by the way, but let's just go with that. Um, so they're creating 2 million jobs a year. Let's just say we go ahead and give men 85% of the contracts. Let's give women 15%. That's 10% more. According to the Senate, that's a million new jobs a year. Free and easy, no new taxes, no new spending, deficit neutral, 50% increase in jobs. 50% increase in jobs. Free. You don't need to spend billions in economic stimulus program, give money to banks, a lot of stuff. Just you know, go ahead and keep giving men 85%, give women 15. You've now increased net new job creation by 50% for free. Doesn't cost a penny. It would be crazy not to do that.
Hmm.
It'd be crazy. I think, yeah, why would you not want to do that? Why would you not want to do something that's free and easy, deficit neutral, that creates a 50% increase in net new jobs? Why would you not support that? Right.
Yep.
So yeah, that's my argument for why anyone running for Congress should support the Don't Cheat Women Project.
Yep. And at the site, don'tcheatwomen.com, everything you and I just talked about is laid out there, very nice and easy for people to follow. And there's a page called What You Can Do, where you can find a letter you can swipe and you can tailor it to your representative, your two senators, also to the White House. And right
Yeah.
there are the links to the different sites where you can very quickly find the contact information, how to contact those offices to get this ball rolling and to create an irresistible tsunami of it. Because to their left on their own devices, candidates and Congress, I'm sorry, they're just not going to tell the truth about the need for this and the opportunity. They're just not.
It's I'll have to say I'm amazed that women's groups haven't been protesting about this for decades, right? I personally have never seen any women's group talk about this issue. If they have, I haven't seen it. But I'm glad that American Small Business League, decided to pursue this. But yeah, it makes such good sense to end the discrimination against women in government contracting and give women a more equitable share. I'm not talking about giving them half of, contracts, 15%, 20%, right? Think about that. How about this? If we gave men 75% of all federal contracts, women would get 5 times as much. By the way, I forgot the exact numbers on this, but if the government spends, they say they spend 800 billion. Let's just go ahead. We know that's low. Let's just say that. Um, if we give women an additional 10% of that, 10% of 800 billion, isn't that $80 billion a year?
Yes.
$80 billion a year in additional federal contracts to women-owned small businesses would have a massive impact on women-owned small businesses. You know what? I forgot to actually explain why I got interested in this. Um, I think if we had more women in Congress, that America would be involved in a lot fewer wars. And so my original thought was we need more women in Congress. And the statistic that I recall was I think 70% of all political donations are made by men.
Mhm.
Most of the leadership positions in government are men. And I think if we gave women additional 80 billion a year in government contracts, it would give them the financial power to make more political donations to get more women elected to Congress. So the Don't Cheat Women Project sounds kind of crazy, but the Don't Cheat Women Project could be the secret to world peace, right?
Well, yeah, and let me flesh out some of what you just shared. That economic fairness has to come first because men dominate in politics because they simply earn and save more than women. And women are doing well by many measures economically in terms of graduating from universities and starting small businesses. And that's fantastic. But this would turbocharge bringing them up to economic fairness or parity. Because, like you just said, not only 70% of donations are made by men, 75% of all the seats in the House, the Senate, all state legislatures, every president's cabinet are men. Almost that many governor chairs, and 90% of party leadership and committee chair positions are men. So, to your point, men and women have different human values, political values, and priorities. So, if we're going to tap into half of humanity, half the human race, what women bring to the conversation to tone down the violence, to tone down the aggressiveness, to bring their nurturing and their caring and their harmony seeking instincts and values and sensibilities to our lives and our society, they have to participate in politics as equals, which follows their economic equality. And this is just one more very muscular and exciting opportunity. Most people don't know that there are federal contracts that are available for small businesses to bid on. Most people don't know how little the federal government does for uh, small businesses. I recently found, Lloyd, that, and I've studied this, I've looked this up a few times. People think of the SBA, they think of loans. You get a loan. Oh, what the government does for small businesses, it gives them loans. Lloyd, it's around 1% of small businesses, of any business, ever get an SBA backed loan. 1%.
Yeah.
And the percentage of our 34, 35 million small businesses that get federal contracts is 0.2%. About 80,000 a year get federal contracts. There's 35 million
It
small
should be 10
businesses.
times that. Should be 10 times that.
Thank
Let me
you.
take this time to point something out that people don't understand. So people think that what we're doing doesn't matter because so few small businesses get federal contracts, right? The Small Business Act, it establishes a 23% goal for federal contract for small businesses and 5 for women, right? It's the largest economic stimulus program in the history of America. It's the single largest economic stimulus program ever passed by Congress. And it's designed to channel federal money into the middle class and create jobs. So if you've got a barber shop in Miami and you go, why do I care about, the American Small Business League? We protect the largest economic stimulus program in the history of America. So if you've got a barber shop in Miami or a shoe repair store in Dallas, what we do is going to benefit you because we're getting, our goal is to bring more money into the middle class, more money into the middle class, create jobs, and boost the middle class economy. But again, people don't understand that. They think, oh, my company, is too small to get federal contracts, or, I've got a paint store in, Denver. What do I care about this?
Uh,
It's channeling money into the middle class, creating jobs, and boosting the middle class economy.
Right. And
So,
most of those contracts go to the big businesses who are only 1/10 of 1% of all businesses in America. And because they're already big, they don't create one new job. But if that money was poured into small businesses like they're supposed to, they would create all those new millions of new jobs every single year, and everyone's town and community would blossom, bloom, and benefit from it, even though the barbershop or the shoe repairman, he's not applying for federal contracts, but his community would boom.
Yeah. You know what? I'll just kind of touch on this briefly. So federal law says 23% should go to small businesses. That's 99.9% of all businesses get 23. That means that top 1/10 of 1% gets 77, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And of course, I've been suing the government for 40 years. And here's what I've discovered: 40 years. As opposed to 23, it's more like three. Uh, if you're watching the show here, listening to us, when you get through watching it, go to your computer and type in Fortune 500 firms landing small business, federal small business contracts. Type in, Fortune 500 firms land federal small business contracts. There's dozens and dozens, maybe over 100 stories, right? So I prompted a federal investigation in 2001. The Government Accountability Office investigated it for months, and they found out that most of the money that the government claims went to small businesses actually went to Fortune 500 firms and their subsidiaries, right? So as opposed
Yep.
to the 23, it's probably about three. The government cheats small business in two ways. Number one, they include hundreds of billions of dollars in contracts to Fortune 500 firms as small business contracts, and they say that's miscoding or computer glitch. They've been saying that for freaking 30 years, right? Miscoding, computer glitches, right? Um, the second way is they exclude a minimum of half of all federal acquisitions from that calculation. That's provable, right? I can always tell, by the way, when I've uncovered fraud at the government, when I ask for something and they won't give it to me. If I ask for something really simple, I asked the Congressional Budget Office under the Freedom of Information Act, documents indicate how much money the government spends on an annual basis for goods and services. They wouldn't give it to me. I've tried for a decade, right? So
Yes.
why won't the government tell us how much they spend? Why?
Right.
Because they're
Right.
lying. They're lying, right? They
Right.
lie about it, which allows them to lie about the fact they're hitting the small business goal. So again, they cheat small business two ways. They exclude most federal acquisitions from that calculation, and they include billions of contracts to Fortune 500 firms, even international companies, in the volume they claim it to small businesses, right?
Nice.
So
Right.
yeah, if the government were to give small businesses the full 23%, that would be it, from my calculations and my research and all my lawsuits, 20% more, according to the Senate. That would create 2 million new jobs a year, would double the number of net new jobs. Can you imagine what happened to the economy if all of a sudden the amount of number of jobs doubled? It would
Right.
create the biggest economic boom in history, right? The stock market, by the way, rises and falls based upon the monthly jobs report. And those fluctuations are like 5 and 10%. Imagine what would happen to the stock market and the world markets if it went up 100%,
Right.
right?
Right.
So yeah, it's crazy. It's free and easy, makes sense. It's logical. It's two and two is four. And yet I've been fighting the government for, decades. Quit giving
Yep.
small contracts to Fortune 500 firms. And it's been an uphill battle because the Fortune 500 firms have the power in government, right? Small
Well,
business have, any representation. But yeah,
well,
it's crazy. It's crazy. But as I'm trying to create the largest economic boom in history, the Pentagon fights me every day. They've been fighting me for decades, right? Isn't that crazy? I'm trying to create the
yeah,
largest economic boom in history. Uh, by the way, imagine the increase in tax revenue if we double the number of net new jobs in America.
exactly. No,
I would
it's
imagine that would end the homeless situation. You know that would end there would
well,
be more homelessness in America if the number of jobs created were doubled. We would need every person, to be working, right?
yeah,
So yeah, increased tax revenue, end homelessness, all these issues, and I'm
yeah.
fighting Congress, the president,
Well,
Pentagon for almost 40 years.
we're
Crazy.
going to create a nice, team, if not an army. We're reaching out to 1,300 people who are declared candidates for the midterms next year, House and Senate. And to those, to consider how big this is, let it all sink in. Watch this show a second time. Let it all sink in, starting with the easy to understand uh, plank or position, raise from 5% to 15% the federal contracts that should go to women owned small businesses. At don'tcheatwomen.com, let's say you're a candidate for office, it explains everything that you've heard so far. And it also alludes to the bigger problem of most small business contracts for decades going to big businesses. Go to ASBL.com then and see all the verification of the fight for the last 35, 40 years about all this. If you're running for the House, if you're running for the House or the Senate, we're giving you on a silver platter these really robust, nonpartisan, meat and potatoes issues to campaign on for the next 11 months until the midterm next year. And you might cut a path straight into the heart of your district or your state, into your constituents, and really be able to do some good on these very, very practical matters that go right into our wallets. That's really the consideration I would emphasize.
Yep. I was just thinking, if someone new, like a lot of people we've talked to, is running against an incumbent, I would say that person thought it was great to give over 95% of all federal contracts to men. They thought that was, they've never proposed legislation to change it. They've never mentioned it. And if I'm
And
elected, I'll change that. I
say
will
that
end
again. Yeah.
discrimination against women-owned small business and federal contracting. So you could attack any incumbent with that one issue, right? They
Yeah.
thought it was great to go over 95% of all federal spending to companies owned by men, while women would get less than 5.
Right.
So
Or if they never consciously thought it was great, that means they didn't look into it. They weren't curious enough to know why who are federal contracts going to and why. That almost disqualifies them from representing you at the national level if they're not savvy enough or curious enough or aggressive enough to look at it. But worse, if they know about it and they go along to get along, and like you just said, Lloyd, they won't question that because they seek donations from those large corporations. This is an issue that could turn things around and bring the federal government back into the hands of the American people, which for decades, more and more people know that's the problem with politics and our economy in the country.
exactly. So yeah, if anybody in the House or the Senate, 99.9% of the businesses in their district are small businesses. And if they've never proposed legislation to stop giving small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms or stop giving over 95% of federal contracts to men, that's a great thing to attack them on. They've never
Right,
done anything.
right, for small businesses. Lloyd, I feel this has been a great conversation. What do you think?
I think so.
Well, then, I want to thank you very much for your time. Remind everybody to go to ASBL.com and don'tcheatwomen.com. And I want to thank everybody for watching and listening today.